You're listening to Two in a Bar. Coming up.
I was very, very embarrassed in front of them all.
And just a sausage landed centre stage. Like really clearly to anybody watching it in the audience.
Something comes out the air, hits me on the head, bounces off the trumpeter in front of me, denting his bell.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Two in a Bar. I'm Chris and I'm joined, of course, by
Joe. I thought I'd say more, but no, good.
Like, start as we mean to go on.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be coming up with our worst 5 moments in music. That sounds a bit strong. The worst 5 moments that we've witnessed in concerts or rehearsals, etc., that we've been in. So how's this going to work with top 5 each?
Well, I've already been a little bit fast and loose with the sort of requirement in terms
Okay.
of I haven't stuck to just concerts and rehearsals for obvious reasons, actually. Well, hopefully they will become obvious when we go through it.
It's very cryptic at the moment.
Yeah, well, you'll just have to keep listening, won't you?
Okay.
I think we should do our number 5s first, and then 4s go on like that.
Yeah.
We might. Who knows? There might be some crossover.
You know, in the previous episode, we were talking about the quality of the podcast from the get-go, and here we are having essentially a planning meeting in the second podcast.
You let them in behind the curtain, and the other one with cheese. So
that's it. Okay, so are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
I'm genuinely really excited for this. When I was coming up with these, I was having a bit of a giggle to myself about a lot of them because I don't think you know them. Maybe one of them. Actually, to be fair, one of them you were in. Spoiler for later.
Yeah, good.
But honestly, we might need to do another one of these at some point because I had to narrow it down to 5. There were so many, which of course, like we're both musicians. We're both doing a lot of music making, so things are going to happen. And yeah, I'm excited to get stuck into these. So have you got a beer?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I will just say it also occurred to me that I think I've probably tried to block out a lot of pretty terrible musical moments.
Right.
And I'm sure many more will come back to me. I thought, oh God, I had suppressed that memory for obvious reasons for many years. And then it's come, I might wake up in a cold sweat later in the week.
Here it is resurfacing. Okay, do you want to go first? Or do you want me
to? I'll go first.
Go for it. Looking forward to
this. So this is a very odd one, okay, for number 5. And I thought it makes sense. I think you'll probably enjoy this one a lot. I've kept it at number 5.
Very keen for this.
Wasn't really a terrible moment, but maybe a bit embarrassing, but also it made me rethink a little bit the way I thought about music, because what it was during our first week at university, probably before I'd met you, I was in my halls.
The dark ages.
Yeah, exactly. Before sort of my eyes have been properly open, and I realised that I was going to stay. I was in my halls and hanging out with, I think, a group of people who lived upstairs. Someone got the guitar out. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but like we were singing songs and stuff like this. Now, as you know, Chris, I'm not a guitarist.
Are you being modest again?
No, I'm not, because
quite a keen ukulele player, as I recall.
Everyone should be a keen ukulele player. Let's not forget that. But I can play chords on the guitar, so that means I can play Oasis songs on the guitar. I can play quite a few Beatles songs.
Sure.
And in my head, I thought I could play Mr. Brightside by the Killers, great song. Now, if you remember that song, it's actually in D flat major, I think, the original. But I would play it in the C, and all I was thinking about was the chord structure. So if you're in C major, it follows quite simple chords from that, right? And on a guitar, you're basically playing C major, you're putting B in the bass, and you're playing F. That being said, the guitar part itself has a very famous riff, doesn't it? Yeah, which I'm sure everyone knows, like the do 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 do, like that. So for some reason, I told people that I could play Mr. Brightside on the guitar. So bear in mind, this is when you've known people for maybe 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, give me the guitar. Let's see what happens. He started playing it, started singing along, wait for everyone else to join in. Didn't happen at all. I was pretty embarrassed given that I was a music student. And then for the next hour or so, people spent the time passed around the guitar saying, I can play Mr. Brightside, playing whatever they wanted. I was very, very embarrassed in front of them all, and went away to try and learn the actual guitar part for Mr. Brightside on my guitar in my room, which I didn't successfully do anyway. So yeah, quite a harrowing story, of trying to introduce myself to new people at university as a music student.
So I've got a couple of questions about this.
Shoot.
The first one is, was this a pre-planned friend-making tool before you came?
Not that
if there's a
I
guitar
can remember.
There, get me on it.
But it let's face it, it would have been something that you've got up your sleeve.
Just in case.
If you think you can play Mr. Brightside on the guitar,
just in case the social skills aren't quite working.
Yeah, exactly. You've got that to fall back on.
Excellent. Second question. I do not play the guitar. I've tried playing the guitar before. My stepdad actually used to teach the guitar, and genuinely off tangent already. My fingers, like the tips of my fingers, are just
You're a flautist, though.
Extraordinarily soft, dainty. I can't. It honestly hurts trying to play the guitar. Trying to just what's the word?
Just imagine
fret a chord.
Well, fret was probably quite appropriate for when you're practicing, wasn't
That's
it?
Yeah.
The dainty fingered Chris. What you certainly couldn't have done is play Mr. Brightside.
Well, what I was going to say
much
is,
like me,
I'm not a guitarist, so I don't really understand how these things work 100%. I say 100% at all. Can't you use a capo to change key? Like if you can play it in C, can you not just put a capo on the fret and that puts it in D flat?
Chris, I think you're missing the point here. The point wasn't that everyone up there was going, "Oh my god, you've played it a semitone flat." That's not what they were doing. They weren't saying it's terrible.
Just check my perfect pitch,
because it sounded nothing like it. Okay, so
oh wow,
let me try and give you a bit more detail then. So it wasn't that I wasn't doing that. It wasn't that I wasn't doing that. It's because I was just strumming chords, going dun 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 like that.
It's like you said before. It's so well known.
I know.
This would be like telling people you can play Fur Elise and just playing an A minor chord followed by an E chord.
Yeah, probably. And also, what I wanted to do afterwards was be like, no, but that's basically the harmonic structure of the song. That you can't do that. You can't do that.
Not when trying to make friends.
No, and not when you've done that after. You can't do that afterwards. Oh, great. Because what they'd have done then is played the harmonic structure to lots of songs, I imagine. So that wasn't a strong moment, I have to say.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So my number 5, I think this is potentially the longest story of mine. So don't worry, they're not all going to be as long as this. I guess I don't want to name any orchestras specifically. One of the orchestras that I conduct, we used to do a thing where at Christmas we'd do a kind of carols thing for the public, but it wouldn't be the full orchestra. It would just be whoever wanted to come and do it. And then on the day, we wouldn't rehearse. We'd just meet about 10 minutes before or something ridiculous, hand out some parts and just see what we had. Just hope we had everything covered for, the 4-part harmonies for Christmas carols.
But they were, okay, so they were members of the orchestra.
Yeah. People who play instruments, if that's what you're getting at.
Who would come to sing?
No, so we had sheet music that would just be, it'd be called kind of, so instead of named parts, like a violin part, flute part, you'd get part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 in different keys. So there was something for each instrument to read. But crucially, part 4, the bass clef part, was only in C.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of instruments that play the bass clef in an orchestra anyway play in C. And yeah, they just sight read these things. I mean, everyone knows the tunes and they're not the most complex. If you're playing in an orchestra and you're playing Beethoven and whatnot, you can sight read these.
One would have thought.
Well, this is where I'm going with this. So we did this for a few years, and it always went down pretty well. You know, everyone likes carol, nice festive thing to do. One year we did it, and I'm not going to say the instrument because that kind of makes it obvious. I don't want to have a go at somebody. I'm laughing. I'm laughing at the situation that this created. Right? You've got the scene. We turn up 10 minutes before, hand out parts, set up, and then do some carols for people. Okay. Nice. This year, the year in question, we only had one part that was a bass instrument that was doing the bass clef part.
Yeah, very important, one might say.
Yeah, and for all of the parts, there was an option for it being in C or being in B flat, because for people who don't play in an orchestra, some of the instruments aren't in the same key. We're not going to get into the details of that here and now. That's for another time. Yeah. But let's say somebody on the violin plays a C, somebody on the clarinet plays a C. They won't come out of the same note because the clarinet's in a different key.
So the important thing there, isn't it, is they can't read the same music and expect the same sound to come out.
Yeah, for sure. So, and transposition is sometimes if you're in a situation where there isn't a part in the key of your instrument, you might have to read something in a different key and then move it as you're playing. So actually you'd be reading one note, but in your head, converting it into another note and playing a different note to what you're reading. It's pretty tricky to do, but because some instruments have to do it a fair amount, those players get pretty good at it. Whereas chances are, if you're not used to transposing, it's because your instrument doesn't have to.
Yeah.
The person playing the bass part, which some would say is the most important part, they came to me just before we started and said, so there isn't a bass clef in B flat part. And I said to them, I'm not going to say which instrument it is, but I said to them, but your instrument's in C, isn't it? So it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And they said, no, I'm pretty sure it's B flat. Like, it's not C. Please don't do this concert in B flat because you're not a transposing instrument. So you're not that used to transposing, are you?
Just to put that in context, if anyone doesn't know, is that not a little bit like someone saying, have you got this car available to drive on the right side of the road instead of the left in Britain?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's remarkable.
Anyway, they did the whole performance. I think I can't remember how many carols we did. It was double figures. It was a fair few carols. And once we started, we couldn't stop. And every single one of them, they tried to transpose it. So not only is it not in the right key, quite a lot of the time it wasn't in any key. And this was for the whole performance. The only person playing the bass line. So we had everybody playing, pretty well, very well for the other stuff, all of the other parts, and then the old bass line underneath, just atonal, not in a key.
I have a few questions, right?
Right.
So this player didn't accept that they were in C.
No.
You gave them...
Didn't trust my opinion, it seems.
You gave them a part in C.
Yeah.
And they still tried to transpose it.
Correct.
Utterly incredible.
And didn't realise, by the way, not having a go. To people who think having a go, it would be obvious within about, I don't know, a few seconds that something's not quite right here.
Surely it would be obvious.
Anytime you've played with other people, you would have to know what key your instrument was in. Like if you were just playing with a piano, you'd have to know that your instrument was in C and the piano was in C. Therefore, and this person, really good player, really good musician. We've all done things. Things go wrong. I
have another question to ask you, Chris, and unfortunately, I don't think it reflects well on you.
Right.
If you were conducting this person in an orchestra and presumably have been for quite a while, why does it take, the Christmas carols for you to realise that this person is reading parts, tone out the whole time?
No, because to be fair, normally they'd be reading a part that just says their instrument the name of their instrument at the top, and they'd
Oh,
take
I
that as a
see.
given that it was in the right key. Whereas when confronted with bass clef in C, that threw the cat amongst the pigeons. But just imagine that for a second. You're somebody who's given up their evening to go and watch this, go listen to some lovely carols, and you're hearing it was like an orchestra playing some carols, and then the equivalent of like a cat walking up and down the piano giving the bass line. Just oh, it was crazy. And so some of this stuff, like I don't want to make it too technical or anything like that for people who don't play an instrument, but yeah, you'd know within a few seconds as an audience member that what's
I think
going on
it
here.
would be a bit like driving a car that you think is an automatic, but is actually, you need to change gears. It's actually a manual, isn't it?
Yeah.
A bit like that. You'd be like, what's that? That roaring sound? Oh, I need to move into second.
And then not believing someone who told you it was a manual, or questioning it when you're hearing these noises. And I love, and this is where I'm, at no point do they think, when Chris said it should be in C, maybe he was right. Maybe this sounds a bit unusual. No, definitely not. Chris guy knows nothing.
That's very, very good. And I fear I won't be able to keep up with much of these sorts of things.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
My number 4
Okay.
is it's actually very, very straightforward. Pretty basic. Although there is quite an interesting story in it. This might be a reason that I got put off. Basically, I was playing lead trombone in a concert at university.
You could have just said trombone, couldn't you? Oh,
No.
trombone.
No, I couldn't. Okay, and it's not just for egotistical reasons. Now, I think I got put off by a friend of ours, Chris. I won't name names. Was conducting. I think it was Brahms's Academic Festival Orchestra. I think.
Okay. Right.
And
I remember that.
I can't remember. I do remember now, but I didn't remember at the time, I should say, that I'd had a bet with him that he wouldn't be able to conduct it from memory.
He did, didn't he?
And he did do it.
Yeah,
and the way
was
he
really
let me know was when I came on stage and with my trombone, the full score was on my part. Was on my music.
Fair. He's done well there. Fair enough. So just to explain for anyone who's unfamiliar, the score is what the conductor reads from, or anyone analysing the entire piece, because it has all of the instruments' music, all of their parts listed at once. So it tends to be quite a big book, quite a lot of pages, but typically, majority of the time, the conductor will have it on their stand in the concert, so they can read to conduct from, unless, of course, they've memorised it.
But I still didn't twig what I'd forgotten about the bet. And I still didn't twig, and I was so confused. I was like, why is this here? And I was slightly panicked.
Yeah.
I didn't know if someone had left it there, if he needed it to conduct.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I should use it for anything. So I'm gonna
using it for?
I haven't got a clue, but I'm gonna blame what happened.
Listen, you were very
later
important.
on
You were the
him.
lead trombone.
I wasn't just any trombone.
Yeah.
Can we make that really perfectly clear? So I'm going to blame what happened later on that. So this is very, very straightforward. Another piece we were doing, I'm pretty sure it's the same. I hope it was the same concert because I'm using that as an excuse. Was Night on Bear Mountain by Mussorgsky. So very, very famous piece.
Yeah.
And a very, very famous trombone part. And you've got the bam 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 bam. Big brass entry, right? Now, in rehearsals, I've been pretty relaxed about it. Quite a nice thing to do. In the concert, I've been thrown by what happened earlier. You're coursing with adrenaline a little bit more.
It flustered.
Thinking, I can't wait for this. Well, apparently so, because first note, the big opening of the brass. When we talk about splitting a note, I did it in spectacular fashion, and instead of the bam bam, it sounded a bit like like a child's toy gun when it's going pew pew. That was the lasting memory of the concert for me. So pew da da da. Everyone noticed. Everyone that I spoke to afterwards noticed. I must have spoken to you about it. No one bothered to be nice.
What kind of feedback were you getting?
People made a joke of it. One of my lecturers told me never to talk to him again. But but it was fine. It was just a shame it was the opening one. It was
really well known,
quite an
as well.
exposed entry, and that might seem like a little one, but I think it was everything else as well in the build up, because it was later on at university. I felt quite confident with everything. I'd probably been on it in rehearsals, lead trombone, doing that. So yeah, not a pleasant one in terms of the ego for number 4. In fact, both times my ego's taken a hit, hasn't it? But
I love that you're trying to palm this off on the score incident earlier on as well.
Well, I think that threw me. I don't want the full score on my thing. No wonder I split a note. I'm lucky I didn't drop my slide.
That was great. Enjoyed that a lot. This is only number 4 as well.
Oh yeah,
number 4. What can we expect by the time we get to the top of the list? Okay, my number 4. It's. I think I remember this correctly, but if on the off chance somebody who is there remembers it better than me, do let me know. It's so I used to do MDing, which is musical directing or conducting for musical theatre, stage shows.
I do.
You've played in quite a few as well, because your dad does that, doesn't he?
Don't say that like that's the only way I'd get in to play in the orchestra. Let them work that out themselves.
Sure.
Okay? Don't Yes, I have. Played
after Night on Bear Mountain. Name was Mud in the trombone circle.
Lucky to get any gigs whatsoever that's outside the family.
That's it. So as you know, having played in musical theatre, like being in the pit orchestra for it,
yeah,
of all kind of scenarios for playing music for people, in musical theatre, things happen, right? Because there's a lot of variables. You've got a big cast on stage, you've got the orchestra, you've got all the sound and light stuff going on. Yeah, there's a lot that can and regularly does go wrong, and so people just kind of get used to dealing with it and getting on with it. So there are a few things I could have picked for this, but the one I wanted to go for was, we were doing The Wizard of Oz, and when you're doing musical directing for theatre, in the score, just above the start of a piece of music, it'll say maybe a couple of lines from the script that the cast are going to say, so that I know, or whoever's conducting knows when to start the piece, basically.
It's a cue, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Thanks, mate. And anyway, there was one in here, and this is the part that I can't quite. It was. I don't think the cue was the dog barking. I think it was somebody saying something to the dog, like, "Why are you barking, Toto?" or "It's okay, Toto," or something to Toto. So Wizard of Oz, Toto the dog, and we had a real dog, like it was a trained dog actor for it. Like, it was a high-end dog.
Why not introduce another variable, eh?
Well, exactly, yeah. So anyway, the way that they were getting this dog around the stage was by like bits of sausage and stuff. So when the dog had to go stage left, it doesn't know that, does it? So it's, entice it with sausage. And there's one song that I had to start, and my cue was something to do with Toto being on stage and somebody saying something to the dog. And one night, Toto didn't want to play ball, but basically somebody threw the sausage out. There's not much going on stage, and just a sausage landed centre stage, like really clearly to anybody watching it in the audience. And then nothing happened. So I think people on stage or backstage were waiting for me to start the song. But I was like, well, the dog's not there. I've not heard the line. We've just got a sausage. It doesn't say wait for sausage. Score. So there's just this kind of awkward, tense, several seconds.
What did you do?
In the end, I was just kind of like, well, we better start, haven't we? Like,
I'm surprised you left it that long. 10 to 15 seconds.
To be fair, that was the first musical I'd conducted, so I wasn't quite as used to some of the stuff that happens.
10 to 15 seconds of all the audience just looking at a piece of sausage, and a very young, confused MD just going, "Let me swear a little bit longer." Listen, this dog's not Mr. Q all week.
He was a professional. Okay. He was a trained actor.
He shouldn't have had his fee after that.
That's it. Anyway, that's my number 4. What you got for number 3?
I like that. Very enjoyable. So my number 3 is also a musical theatre one, actually.
Excellent. Already looking forward to it.
Well, it's a very short one, and it comes under the category of the variables you were talking about. And in fact, there are a few of these things that seem to happen with musical theatre.
Definitely.
So it's actually about an accident. So I was playing in the pit, but like I say, a few accidents have happened before. You mentioned my dad conducts them, and in one of them he sort of cut his head quite badly on like this sort of metal beam. Oh yeah, it was bleeding quite profusely.
A metal beam
during the interval. He's like cut on his head.
Jeez.
And everyone going, "You're gonna be okay to conduct the second half, Dad?" I was there ready to step up from trombone 2 this time. I was there, like, "Dad, you take your time. I'm ready for literally pass the baton." But he was okay. But this happened to me. I must have been, I think, in sixth form, and I was playing in the show Annie, which obviously very, very famous, very fun musical with lots of children, and children were all great.
Lots of bleeding heads.
Well, yes, lots of bleeding heads. But what happened this time was, I don't know if you know the musical Annie.
To be honest, I know Hard Knock Life, and that's about it.
Yes, well, there's a scene where they're talking on the radio, and the girls in the orphanage or whatever are listening to the radio, and it's the song's called "You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile." That's what they sing.
Okay.
And the scene, the way it's normally done, it's quite clever because it's showing like a radio at the time, and you're listening to someone tap dance, but the audience can see that it's not actually someone tap dancing, it's someone holding tap shoes and just hitting shoes instead. So it's a bit like with radio shows like The Archers on Radio 4, where instead of a fire crackling, they've actually got like a bit of piece of paper that they sort of fizzle together, a bit of plastic, that creates that sound.
Yeah, sure.
That's the sort of trick they're doing. And it's a bit of a joke with the audience, and the girls keep singing, "You're never fully dressed without a smile," whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're playing along, tapping going with these shoes, bum, bum, like doing all that sounds great. Suddenly, something comes up the air, hits me in the head, bounces off the trumpeter in front of me, denting his bell. Oh, what's happened?
You'd say the bell is the end of the trumpet.
The bell's the end of the trumpet, exactly. Yeah, the bit that makes it recognizable as a trumpet.
Yeah.
It's a tap shoe's come flying through the air, hasn't it, and landed in the orchestra pit. And what's happened is the guy who doing the tap shoes has got a little bit too enthusiastic, let one of them go. So he presumably carried on doing the tapping with just one shoe. Nearly took me out and damaged the trumpeter's instrument in front of me as well. So yeah, not a particularly pleasant one. A bit of a scary one.
Wow.
Because you're in the firing line, aren't you, in the orchestra there, as you said.
Yeah. Wow. How big was the shoe? Like, if it's denting a trumpet, it's quite a heavy duty thing,
it's a tap shoe, right? So it's got metal heel on it.
I mean, I've never been close to a tap shoe. And
well, listen, count your blessings, because I've been very close.
Yeah, 2 times.
I've nearly had a light fall on me as well once in the audience.
What is this theatre you're in with like
I was in a
cathedral, falling lights?
This should be a joint number 3. I'm sorry, because I was in a cathedral and it had a light which had a massive sheet of glass on top of it, a big pane of glass, and the glass literally something happened with the light to make the glass explode out and then fall from, I don't know, about 20 feet. And I was okay, and it bounced off the back of the guy sitting in front of me and like landed at my feet and didn't even shatter. But that was a little bit scary. That was as an audience member, yeah. So yeah, that's my number 3.
Okay, well, I think because we've been recording for about half an hour, I think we're going to split this up into 2 parts, call it a day here, and do the other 5 next week. Okay, thanks for joining us. Come back next week where we will be talking part 2 of our worst musical moments. Just a reminder, what day is podcast day, Joe?
Wednesday. You'll probably be thinking they can't get much worse, but we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.